Okay. Here we go with a new week. Last day of March. Yep. You know what that means? Wanathon. Yep. Okay. Let's do that. Let's see. Okay. JR says he's ready to connect. And there we go. Okay. That should be good, JR. Solid connection. Folks, we are ready to roll. Hope everyone had a good weekend. We'll have politics this week with Justin Katz coming up in momentarily. Good. 103. Right now we are live on our Facebook page. Also on X and YouTube. So we have information about, apparently there was an incident in Woonsocket last night. It does not sound good. That sounds like a very bad stabbing, as a matter of fact. We'll have details on that. I believe the individual is in very serious condition. We'll touch on that. And remember, folks, final day of the month, Wanathon, all stars today and tonight, doubled. That happens final day of the month. So if you support the content, we've had a big month. There's Pat and Tammy. There's my friend Jane Rice and Cheryl. Andrea Lemire is here. Always better when Lemire is here. Everybody says that. All right, we're starting live in 2 minutes. Oh, my God. Oh, my goodness. All right, we're starting in 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Let's see. Seth Magaziner, Congressman Magaziner, is celebrating. What is he celebrating? Transgender Visibility Day. Oh, okay. There's the congressman. I don't know why he's the congressman. He should not be the congressman. But he is the congressman. All right, we're going to start in just a moment. There we go. Okay. And we are standing by. Yep. And there it is, folks, at 106. This is, you guessed it, the real news. Now, tomorrow and this week, obviously, jury selection begins. The retrial of Karen Reed. And so we will, in fact, be covering that. We're going to go in and out. We'll see what the other news of the day is, so to speak, but certainly a lot of anticipation for the Karen Read retrial. Now, right now, we are live on, obviously, AM 1380 and 99.9 FM. You can also watch us right now. You can always listen at depetro.com, but we are live on YouTube and X and also our Facebook page. Folks, as always, visit our website, depetro.com and depetro.com, which is right by the Cohasset Inn, 226 Cohasset Avenue, West Warwick. Remember what we say, lunch, dinner, or drinks in the lounge, and they're waiting for you, excuse me, at the Cohasset Inn. And also, this portion of the program brought to you by Serve Pro of Rhode Island. Now, folks, you see on Road Patrol, we're out, and there's businesses, homes, disaster has struck. What do I mean by that? Well, fire damage, water damage, storm damage. Serve Pro of Rhode Island. And we want to welcome them in as a sponsor. And you're going to be hearing a lot about them, especially when we're out on Road Patrol Live. So, because if anything, with, when disaster strikes, everything changes. That's where you need Serve Pro of Providence. They come in, water damage, fire, mold, storm recovery. They bring your property back to life, and they do it fast, thorough, professional. Serve Pro of Providence. It's not just your house. It's a home. It's your home. Call them 401-941-5500. 401-941-5500. Now, I'm going to be sharing their Facebook page. And here's the thing about the things I'm mentioning. That can happen at any time, and people don't even realize that. I mean, when you think about it, sometime tonight or tomorrow, this week, someone out there right now, everything's going along, and then suddenly their business, their commercial building, there's some kind of a fire. I mean, it basically happens every single night. But Serve Pro, they are the restoration heroes. So when disaster hits, you need Serve Pro of Providence. Water, fire, mold, storm, damage strikes, 24/7. You can contact Serve Pro. And many, 401-941-5500. 401-941-5500. Serve Pro. That's who you're going to call. And they will handle everything efficiently, quickly, fast, thorough, professional. It's Serve Pro. And they're near you. But call that main number wherever you are. And again, they are available 24/7. So a disaster does strike. And unfortunately, with Road Patrol, we cover it. Suddenly, there's a business owner and they're fired either through water damage or fire or water damage, anything. It is a disaster. 401-941-5500 for Serve Pro. Now, proud sponsors of The Real News and also of Road Patrol Live. Now, folks, we're going to speak momentarily with Justin Katz, managing editor of anchorrising.com, for our segment, Politics This Week. Congressman Seth Magaziner, and we're going to talk about this a little bit, but there's several things in the news right now. I'll touch on the Karen Read trial probably a little bit later into the hour. Actually, as we're waiting for Justin, I did hear from Woonsocket Police, and this was last night. Uniformed officers responded to Landmark Medical Center. 19-year-old male walk-in stab wound victim. Victim was barely communicating, could not give details. He was then eventually transported to Rhode Island Hospital for trauma care. Detectives and officers began the investigation, learned there was a motor vehicle accident on Elm Street. Wow, around 4:45, and an ensuing altercation between two groups of young adults and juveniles occurred. The investigation led to the arrest of a 17-year-old male who was charged felony assault battery, remanded the Rhode Island Training School. Ryan Sykes of Lincoln, also charged with obstructing officers during the investigation. The victim is in stable condition. So that was, wow, talk about some action last night in Woonsocket. But I want to commend Woonsocket police were obviously, quick to respond to that. And let me just, and quickly, that happens sometimes when we are covering certain stories where either there are people that refuse to cooperate with law enforcement, which is many times, or either they refuse to cooperate, or in a situation like that, they're unable to communicate with exactly what happened. So let me just, I'm not exactly sure what happened with that. Okay. We are, okay, there we go. All right. And folks, we're going to bring them on. Before I do that, I want to just remind you about Propane Plus. Remember, for all your propane needs, call Propane Plus today. Remember, serving both Rhode Island and Massachusetts. Whether it's heating or cooling, you can depend on Propane Plus. In Rhode Island, call them 401-885-4209. In Massachusetts, 508-252-3359. Heating and cooling, it's Propane Plus. Residential, commercial, you just go online, type in your zip code, boom, Propane Plus, 3 generations, heating or cooling, you can depend on Propane Plus. Well, folks, let's bring him on. He is the managing editor for anchorrising.com, our segment Politics This Week. And joining us, as he does every Monday, is Justin Katz. Good afternoon, Justin.
Good afternoon, John. Great to see you.
Good. There we go. Justin, let's start off. I want to hear your thoughts. You have Congressman Seth Magaziner, who in 2022, when he did, and this is so important, I mean, he did technically beat Cranston Mayor Alan Fung for that congressional seat, but as you and I have talked about, he lost it day of voting. He really just won because of ballot harvesting. He had, I'm pretty sure it was 14,000 mail ballots compared to Fung's 4,000 mail ballots. But he was always saying he was going to move into the district. And now we've learned over the weekend that he's not going to move into the district. I want to start off our segment by getting your reaction to that.
Well, what it tells me, first of all, is that to him, the cost of maintaining this charade that he intends to move is getting bigger than the cost of just admitting the truth and that he's fine living there in another district than he represents. And what that tells me also is that Rhode Islanders are less concerned as a whole with being genuinely represented by somebody who lives in their district than they are, the more powerful faction are those who just don't care. They want a reliable Democrat partisan vote, and he's that. I think there's also probably a bit of preparation for when Rhode Island inevitably loses a congressional seat, in part because we're going to have a lot more trouble counting illegal immigrants to get us there. And I think that's something he's probably got in his mind, is what best positions him to be the congressman when he has to go up against Gabe or whoever happens to be.
Now, on top of that, he's holding a luncheon that honors various women. And I am actually glad, Justin, anytime the Rhode Island Republican Party, that they are a little proactive, maybe a little more aggressive. I certainly like it, but I like the fact, and I believe it was Brian Newberry that put out that Jasmine Crockett of Texas, who, I mean, has been saying some pretty outrageous things, including calling Governor Abbott of Texas Hot Wheels. And she also made a remark that Byron Donald has been, I think it was something along the lines of the congressman of Florida, that he's been whitewashed because married his spouse is Caucasian. What do you make of the fact that Magaziner is bringing her in as part of this luncheon?
Well, it shows just how radical the Democrat Party is. That's their trajectory. I mean, it used to be Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez who was the radical one. We're going beyond that now. I mean, this is Jasmine Crockett. I mean, that is overtly racist to say because he married a white woman, he thinks he's whitewashed. And that's just racism. that is as divisive as you get, as much of stoking division and hatred in the country as you can possibly get on that particular issue. But it doesn't matter because she's an up and coming star. She's like it's almost like influencer culture brought to politics. And so she might as well be on TikTok making silly videos and being popular. Magaziner invites her. And so that's all they really care about. And here he is, this guy, he wears his pastel green sweater everywhere. And kind of the definition of whitewashing in some perspectives. And it's just not noticed. I mean, I had an interesting exchange with Dan McGowan of the Boston Globe, who responded to Brian Newberry, the Republican representative, and said, I just don't care about this story. You can, and that's understandable, but I don't. And I think there's something important here. It's not so much that Dan McGowan, the individual, doesn't care. It's that as a journalist, he doesn't think his audience should care or does care enough for him to pay attention to it, which contrasts hugely. He was a very vocal speaking out against General Mike Flynn, saying bad things about him. And he admitted to me on social media that he would find a Republican politician who had a fundraiser with Mike Flynn, that would be reduce that person's credibility with him. And that, presumably he would think it worth reporting. But Jasmine Crockett, whatever, I just don't care. And that's how they generate this narrative and get people to really have a skewed sense of who's radical and who's not.
Not only that, Justin, but that remark about Governor Abbott and calling him Hot Wheels, Magaziner is in the seat that for 20 years was held by Congressman Jim Langevin, who is in a wheelchair. So what I find just so can you imagine the reaction if you had a Republican inviting a Republican in who had made a condescending, crude, insensitive remark about, Congressman Langevin or something about someone in a wheelchair. And Langevin, I mean, he holds the seat that Langevin held, and he's still bringing her in.
Yeah, well, that is definitely an angle that you would think would be brought up if the stages were reversed. They'd ask Langevin for comment. They'd be all over that. But because they don't want to raise any red flags about Magaziner's credibility with moderate voters, they just won't do that. They'll let it slide. He gets a pass. Oh, we're not interested. It's just a meaningless fundraiser after all, which would not be the case if the roles were reversed.
Folks, again, our segment is Politics This Week. With us is Justin Katz, managing editor, anchorrising.com. Justin, let's stay with the media for a moment. Last week, and I sent them to you, I think it was pretty high profile, 2 examples where Nicole Solis and also former Representative Patricia Morgan, who's still very active and vocal, but they were really, that I've noticed, they're starting, the drumbeat is getting louder about local media. And then Channel 12, they really came under attack, or criticism, I should say. Maybe attack is too strong, but they faced strong criticism for putting in a photo, when it was, as they call it, gun day at the State House with the supporters of the Second Amendment up there. And there were some, whatever they are, moms in action, but apparently Channel 12 used a photo from the past that showed, all of these different people up there. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts about how there just seems to be, to me, there's more criticism about local media and some of the coverage.
All right, well, I don't know, but there are 2 things here. I don't know that it's more criticism so much as one thing. It's just getting so outlandish when they're using a fake image. It reminds me of, like, if anybody uses artificial intelligence and sometimes it'll just say something that isn't true. They call them hallucinations. It's sort of like that. They needed a picture of of both sides protesting, so they went and they got one, even though it didn't happen. I mean, they were trying to construct a narrative, and that's what they do. It's getting so outrageous. The same thing with the Jasmine Crockett story and a bunch of others. I mean, we've now got Elon Musk, who's operating with the president of the United States, out there saying things like he's actually tested, and they've found people who registered to vote with illegal immigrants registered to vote with Social Security numbers. They found that 40% of calls to the Social Security Help Center are fraudulent. These sorts of things are news, but we're not hearing them, or we're getting tilted views of them. We've talked about recently the Brown doctor who was refused re-entry into the country, and that was a big human interest story until it started to turn out, oh, well, she was pals with the Hezbollah leader who died.
Right, a terrorist.
Yeah, we're just not getting the news. And so that's one big part of it. The cries from folks like us, from Nicole Solis, from Christian Morgan, they have so much more credibility, because if you get somebody to look at the facts, there's no denying the bias. And I think the other thing is social media as well. I mean, and here Elon Musk appears again with having taken over X, formerly Twitter. We can get these statements out there for people to see. So it's not as difficult as it once was. Whereas before, the mainstream media completely controlled that channel. Of course, the problem is where if they still refuse to talk about it, everybody's kind of in their own little grouping on social media. So we'll hear more about it, but I don't know if the average voter is getting that healthy a diet of facts that are of what's actually happening out there.
I think you're right about social media, Justin, because these are stories that do in conversations and posts that, to me, they're more accurate of what's going on than whatever the quote so-called traditional media. And I'll talk about, I mean, to me, the Providence Journal at this point is it's just bordering on being irrelevant. And whether it's Kathy, Greg, or the TV stations, these are stories that they would never cover and they just wouldn't focus on because they, just have their own kind of agenda they go on. But because of, and I give great credit to like a Nicole Solis or Patricia Morgan, they do, point out and it brings up discussion. They invoke discussion of some of these matters because of social media. Now, Justin, Governor Mckee, I think it's interesting. Two things about him. Actually, three. One, what is your thought on he's insisting on these pay raises for these department heads? It's completely tone deaf. You have Speaker Sakachi saying it's not the time. Number two, he had that press conference where he announced that they got the federal funding, $220 million for the bridge. I think there's something more to that story that just hasn't been revealed yet. There's just something about that seems odd to me. And then number three, as soon as he announced that, he disappeared for basically almost a 2-week vacation or a week and a half vacation that he loves to take. Any of those three that you want to touch on in any particular order?
That's right. I like the idea. He disappeared. Is like, I don't know if you remember the Seinfeld episode where George starts leaving on a high note. He'll tell a good joke and he leaves the meeting. I think it's almost like our governor. Oh, I got a good news clipping. See ya. I'll be back when I've got something else good to say. I'm not here to get anything bad. The thing with the raises, it is puzzling. Particularly, the media has picked up this as a controversy. Darcy, the House leader, is skeptical of it, to say the least. To me, it indicates Mckee is not representing the people so much as he's desperate to please the people who are keeping him in power and keeping his operation at least functional. And I think that's what you're seeing. He has to keep his department heads in line because they're key in some cases, I think, to the labor unions who are keeping him in line or keeping him in office. And there are also people who are they take the fall for him when he needs it. They go out and they actually do the press conference when he wants to avoid it. I think he needs to keep them happy. And so at the end of the day, I mean, they're generally 5% raises. It's not a doubling of salaries or anything like that. But I think that's what I'm reading here is he needs to keep the people happy who actually are his constituents. And it certainly isn't us. It's the people, the insiders. And
that's an excellent point. Yes. What about the whole thing of the bridge funding, and then, boy, he likes what I just find out is he likes time off, and to me, he seems to just be taking more and more time off.
Yeah, he does. What I'm hoping is that the bridge funding is coming with a whole lot of strings, and so it may not be that there's something suspicious about getting the loans, like he's pretending he's getting something he isn't. It might be that there are strings that are going to come back and bite him in 2 to 4 years when the Trump administration says, hey, you signed this agreement and you didn't do XYZ good government thing. What's going on here? Or he goes back and says, oh, we couldn't fit it in budget, so we need more money. And the federal government says, no. That may be the rest of the story that we'll see coming down the pike. But it is with this administration in Rhode Island, and also with the Trump administration, the huge gap in tone and priorities there. It is strange to get this positive story about funding and not suspect there might be more to it.
Yeah, and on top of that, with him going on yet another vacation. He just doesn't, to me, Justin, seem concerned that, for all accounts, the Senate president has been out more than he's been in. Now the governor takes off. To me, it's almost like they had just basically admit that so much of this runs without them even being there, and they don't. I just question how actively engaged they are in the process. I also want to ask your thought on the media really jumped on board with this Pawtucket superintendent, who not only is she leaving, I believe she's from Florida, but the first thing she does is sit down and start talking to the media and making, some pretty serious accusations regarding Pawtucket and racism, and she was being set up to fail. I don't know what to make of that story, but I don't know enough about her. I don't know how she ended up in that job, but with everything that's going on in education and how underperforming it is, and now you have a situation like this, it almost, I don't know what to make of it. It almost seems like a pretty well orchestrated plan that someone may have had in coming into a situation, simply because you think of the different changes that sometimes have happened, and for someone to come out of the box and immediately have all of these, pretty serious lawsuits. But I'd like to just hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I have a really hard time believing, Pawtucket is 1950s Mississippi or something, and she was really genuinely facing all this racist attacks. It's the kind of environment where everybody would want her to succeed and be able to point to her and say, look how progressive we are. And so it's given the real narrative and the real impulses of people around here, it's difficult to believe any real story, which makes it kind of just irresponsible journalism to just rush with this, put it out there. You can say just about anything without consequence. And a lot I didn't see any specific details of this person did that. It was all stuff that seems par for the course to me for superintendents. So the school committee berated me in public, and the labor unions being very resistant and causing trouble and not being truthful about our interactions. That's being a superintendent in Rhode Island. And
Right.
That's part of the job. And it does, to the extent it's genuine, it made me think of, I recently read of a sociological experiment where they painted scars on people's faces. They showed them the scar in a mirror, and then the people went into like a fake interview for a job. But on the way in, they said, oh, let me just fix that. And they took the scar off. And those who thought they had a scar responded as if the person was insulting the scar on their face, even though there was nothing there. That's what it feels like to me. It feels like we've built up this culture where it's just expected you're going to encounter racism. She said her friend said, be careful. This is not Mississippi burning in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. So I'm very skeptical, and I think the news media are irresponsible to report it the way they are.
I agree. And just, Channel 12 immediately went as if they had this big sit down. These are all just allegations. Again, I don't know this individual at all, but Pawtucket, if anything, Pawtucket is certainly one of the more progressive cities in our area, certainly from their reps of Sandra Cano and some others, plus the first congressional district has Gabe Amo. To me, I don't know how this individual got hired, but it's as if you just have this person that comes up, I think she's from Florida, and just starts painting this narrative about the North and what it's like. And I agree with you, Mayor Grabian. By all accounts, I see the guy seemingly almost too much as like a loyal soldier to Mckee, and went along with they lost the Paw Sox, they get in the soccer stadium. But I've never heard of these types of allegations. And what I just found astounding was local media just seemed to be, well, if she's willing to say it, then we're just going to air it, even though I just found a lot of her allegations hard to believe in just the magnitude of lawsuits that this person was immediately launching.
Right. And I think the news media, really something like this ought to have really high threshold of credibility, of suspicion, not the least because the school district, everybody involved except this person can't say anything because it's an employment matter and all that.
Right.
it really ought to, this sort of thing, if we're going to ignore stories about Jasmine Crockett, this sort of thing, maybe file it, put a little note, superintendent files lawsuits. That's about as far as you really can go. If you start airing these controversies, you generate a story that may not exist. In fact, maybe the opposite of reality, and you have no way of knowing. But it fits the narrative, and I too often that's what the news media, they're trying to create that narrative. That's how they think they sell stories.
And again,
as a solid discourse.
Neither one of us are defenders of Pawtucket or Mayor Grabian, but some of her allegations, you're exactly right, Justin. In the local media, they should also recognize the fact that he can't say anything about it, and the school committee can't say anything about it, and the Pawtucket school system can't say anything about it. And meanwhile, this woman, how much is she looking for? $500,000, $1 million? I mean, they just put it out there in allowing all these pretty outrageous accusations to be made. And I'd be curious to see if then there's anything that can really back this up, or someone that many times cities just settle these and it doesn't matter how weak the case is. Folks, it's time for Katz's Corner. And this is a story that Justin Katz has found that he finds interesting. And what do you have for us this week, Justin Katz?
Well, this week it's a story that the Center for Freedom and Prosperity has found. They've been on the transgender issue in Rhode Island, and they've actually just filed a complaint against the Rhode Island School District for an as yet anonymous plaintiff who was a mother of a child who was socially transitioned in public school starting in grade 8 without the mother's notice, and the mother didn't find out until the daughter tried to kill herself 2 years later. And there's a lot of secrecy from the school department, and this hits on two sensitive issues for me. First of all, it's unconscionable that Rhode Island law at the district level and then at the state level ought to be encouraging school districts to lie to parents, contributing to this estrangement and just bad outcomes for everybody involved. And two, it goes back to what we've been talking about today with the news media controlling the narrative. These stories pepper the United States, but you don't hear about them. They're not put together in a solid narrative because the news media, it doesn't fit. They don't want people to be thinking maybe there's something strange going on here. And to me, this is a very big indication of a problem. And hopefully the center gets some traction in the judiciary. And so it actually has a good effect in the end.
Well, one thing that we've both noticed is Nicole Solis gets no coverage at all locally. She's a bigger name outside of Rhode Island. They never highlight her on anything. So they're uncomfortable covering her. They're uncomfortable covering a lot of the stories that she brings up. But Nicole is just folks, again, you can read the latest on anchorrising.com. He is Justin Katz. Justin, excellent job as always, and we'll talk to you next week. Okay, and there we have it, folks. That's Justin Katz in our segment, which is Politics Week, and we will have that posted. I want to stay on schedule at 1:34, this portion of the program, and I am getting some people that are contacting me saying they have more information regarding the Woonsocket thing. There's something very significant about Woonsocket that I do want to touch on. Folks, this portion of the program, and it's brought to you by Roof Co. Rhode Island. Roof Co. Rhode Island provide top-level service, prices you can afford. Call them for a free estimate, 401-868-7149. Roof Co. Rhode Island. Now, maybe you have leaky roof, missing, lifted or curled shingles. We've had a very stormy winter. We've had a lot of people, your property, your home, your business has been damaged. Maybe granules in the gutter, damaged chimney flashing. Roof Co. Rhode Island. Give them a call, 401-868-7149. Roof Co. Rhode Island, free estimate. Nothing else matters with your structure of your home or business. If you don't have the proper roofing, a lot of things can go wrong. Roof Co. Rhode Island, free estimate. Your home or business is going to be fantastic and look fantastic with a brand new roof. 401-868-7149. Online, roofcori.com. You can also find them on Facebook. High quality roof installed by an experienced roofing professional, which is your best defense against wind damage. And let's face it, lately it's just the month of March has been a wind tunnel around here. Call a licensed insured roofer. That's so key. With decades of expertise, Roofco RI. They'd be happy to inspect your roof for wind damage, give you a free estimate. Call them 401 868 7149 for Roofco RI. Well, folks, good afternoon. Now, I also want to touch on this is the real news. Now, I posted, and the rest of the media, they kind of ignore this. And what I find interesting about it is if someone put up a flyer, we've heard so many of these stories. If someone put up a flyer that somehow could be interpreted as racist or insensitive or whatever, it's full-fledged, huge local story. But if you check, I posted this on Instagram. We started posting it on Facebook. And these flyers are all over Silver Lake. I think they're also in parts of Providence. But these are activist groups. If you see ICE, call 401-675-1414. If ICE or police come to your house, don't open. Here's what it says on the flyer, and it's also in Spanish. Excuse me. ICE cannot enter your house without a warrant signed by a judge. That is the crux. That Governor Mckee stands in the way of ICE doing their job. It's so interesting they put that as the first bullet point, because anyone that questions Governor Mckee, what we already know by now. What do they say to him? Is Rhode Island a sanctuary state? And what does Governor Mckee say? No, we're not a sanctuary state. They asked the wrong question. The question they should be asking him is, can ICE enter a home without a warrant signed by a judge? What do you think his answer is? No. He instructs law enforcement not to cooperate. I repeat, Governor Mckee instructs state police law enforcement not to cooperate. Chafee changed it in 2014. Raimondo kept it that way. Mckee keeps it that way. But all he does, Governor Mckee, he seeks out platforms where he'll be asked, are we a sanctuary state? And he just, no, not. They don't ask the question the right way. I think one of his last interviews, he said, I'll have to go back and check on that. Folks, he's not being truthful. Number two, they may come with a warrant signed by someone who's not a judge. Do not open. You do not have to speak to ICE. You have the right to remain silent and contact an attorney. Do you understand these people are not citizens? Do you understand many times these people are wanted for crimes in this country and many times in other countries? If you're detained by ICE or the police, this is on this flyer. Now, again, it's on Facebook and it's also on Instagram. I'll put it on YouTube. You have the right to remain silent, demand and to see an attorney. You're not even here legally. Where do these people think they have the right to make these demands? Never sign documents or answer questions without an attorney present. You have the right to a trial before being deported. Do not consent to voluntarily leave the country without an attorney. Why would they be leaving the country? Why would they be leaving the country? Because they're not supposed to be here in the first place. ICE does not have to provide free attorneys, but they must provide a list. ICE Watch Alert channel, and they have the phone number. Now, folks, my point is, how come, let's talk about how come the Democrat Party isn't condemning that? They're encouraging people to break the law. They're providing, and by the way, Sabina Matos, Lieutenant Governor, she's on board with this. Why does Matos encourage this? Why does Governor Mckee encourage this? The Rhode Island Democrat Party is so broken, and it basically doubles as a criminal organization. Why are they providing these tips and telling people how they can break the law, how they can get around our laws? And no coverage. It just goes beyond. And I already know the answer. because so many members of the media are right in line and would put these flyers up everywhere. Now, from what I understand, they're all over the place in Silver Lake and Odeyville. And they're actually even inside some businesses. But why does the Democrat Party encourage that? Mckee knows about this. What do you think his reaction is? Oh, I don't know. He's always Sergeant Schultz and called on something like that. They're encouraging them. And let's talk about some of these individuals that they're going after. You know, and I'm glad Justin brought that up. That doctor at Rhode Island Hospital in Brown, the local media, they were up in arms. They were ready to go to the mat on that story. She's being deported. Trump is out of control, and Elon Musk. She flew to Lebanon to attend the funeral of the Hezbollah leader that we killed, or the Israeli was killed in an Israeli strike. This isn't someone she knew 20 years ago. This isn't many years ago she attended a meeting. She took time off, 2 weeks, flew to Lebanon, attended the funeral of the terrorist leader of Hezbollah, who was taken out in an airstrike. I'll go first. We don't want someone like that in this country. And as far as that, the student at Tufts, don't you understand? And you never hear this talked about. And they were all upset that it was being filmed. And this person in the window was like, show your faces. And she was one of the organizers of all this anti-Semitic talk and propaganda on college campuses against Jewish students. Before people say, well, she don't. Wrong. She's not an American. I give credit to Marco Rubio. They're here visiting. We allow them to attend these universities. You don't get, let me explain something. Whether it's Columbia or Tufts, or you don't get to come here that we give permission. And then you start chasing and terrorizing American Jewish students on college campuses. Let's talk about what's not happening. And the people that come forward to defend them, she has freedom. No, she doesn't have freedom. She's not an American. And she's taking the place of an American student who could be at Tufts or who could be at Columbia or some of these other universities. Good. They know who they are. I'll tell you, they know who the ringleaders are. That one in Columbia, he's a member of Hamas. He's the one that was the ringleader to take over the campus, take over the dorm, chasing the Jewish students around campus, terrorizing them, going after them in the library, calling for genocide of the Jews. You think you're going to come into our country and do that? Hey, listen, you're not even supposed to be here, Ahmed. And all these people upset at Tufts. Hey, screw, just like the doctor from Brown. Oh, really? How was the funeral in Lebanon? My favorite line, the local media won't talk about. And they were so, oh my God, local press. They were all up in Boston. We have to get her out. We're going to show, yeah, funny how her attorney backed out of the case immediately. Oh, that's interesting. I still love her line. Oh, I don't follow their politics. Oh, this is what she said to Homeland Security. I don't follow their politics. I'm a religious follower. Folks, in other words, that's more dangerous. It's one thing to be, I like their politics. Oh, no, I follow their religious teachings. Oh, you mean like the religious teachings that told some of the, the terrorists to take over an airplane and fly it into a building, like those types of teachings. Listen, we don't need them. This isn't Little House on the Prairie, the episode where the doctor's leaving town and then the Ingalls and others and Nellie, whoever runs that grocery store, they have to find the new doctor. It's not that. She can't. They had the protest at the State House. She attended the funeral of a terrorist. That guy not only would go to bed at night dreaming of taking out innocent people in Israel and other places. He would fund and motivate and recruit young people to carry out these missions. That was the funeral she went to. Seth Magaziner, she's a very brave. What? Oh, now they're brave. For what? Going to the funeral? No. Get them out of here. Deport them. I think it's time we start to ask for some documentation on some of these people. That's my thought. So that is absolutely my thought. And the same thing, Matos having a meeting to organize illegals what to do if they're going to get deported. Whose side are you on? Notice there's no coverage of it. There's no coverage of it. Lieutenant Governor Matos, we are the democracy. Folks, this portion of the program is brought to you by Watson Materials. Largest selection of landscape materials in Rhode Island is Watson Materials. Landscape lighting, pavers, retaining walls, natural stone, cobblestone. Call Sean at Watson Materials, the most complete selection of landscape materials in Rhode Island, 401-885-0600, 401-885-0600 for Watson Materials. Now, I also want to remind people, not long ago, it's a terrible funeral in East Greenwich on Main Street. Hill Skeffington Funeral Home. Well, they're still operating and they're rebuilding. And if you're in need of either making plans for yourself or a loved one, they are open. Hill Skeffington, 401-884-9222. Hill Skeffington Funeral Home and Cremation. Transfer to the funeral home from the place of death anywhere in the world. Coordinating vital statistics, obituary information with the family, obtaining the death certificate from the doctor or medical examiner, obtaining other legal authorizations for final disposition, coordinating plans with clergy, cemetery, scheduling of service and visitation. 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Hill Skeffington Funeral Home and Cremation. And they are open. That fire devastated the building, but they're open. 401-884-9222. They have a makeshift space. But what I think, as I see some of this kind of back and forth, and maybe fighting is too much of a hard word, but when I see some of this going on, I don't, Justin is right. The local media, why does Seth Magaziner? Now I know Channel 12 gave him he did say it on Newsmakers. He was ready for it, by the way. Now, if they hadn't asked him, he wouldn't have admitted to it. If they had not asked Congressman Magaziner, he wouldn't have admitted to it. But folks, when does the lying stop? I loved how that guy in Barrington said to Gabe Amo, Congressman Amo, you're a disaster. All you do is lie and scare people. Elon Musk and his team, they've found out 40% of phone calls to Social Security are fraudulent. There's scams. You can contact Social Security and say, I want to transfer. This is how I'm getting my money. I want to put it. 40% are fraud. That's a high number. That's number one. Number two, Social Security. There are people deceased still getting it. There's people that are deceased out of the country that are getting it. We need to cut down on the waste and fraud. And what does Seth Magaziner say, the congressman? They're going after Social Security. They're going to improve Social Security. You get rid of the fraud and you have more money for Social Security. But they're so disingenuous. He is just repulsive. And he's going to have that Jasmine Crockett come to Rhode Island next Monday as she's mocking the governor of Texas who's in a wheelchair. Magaziner, you have the congressional seat that was held by Jim Langevin for over 20 years, who's in a wheelchair. And that's who you're going to host. He is just that guy. I don't know. Make no mistake about it. He has resources. He has money. I'm not saying he's going to be easy to be taken out, but I would like to believe we could do much better. One of the reasons why people are so frustrated is we don't have good representation in Washington right now. We just don't. We don't have actually. I ran into someone this morning. We don't have any representation in Washington, and they're always speaking on behalf of everybody. Governor Mckee, the people of Rhode Island are not going to put up with Elon Musk. According to who? You have a 22% approval rating. Sheldon Whitehouse, the people are with. No, the people are not with you. Seth Magaziner, he doesn't even live in the district. He can't even vote for himself. Folks, this portion of the program is brought to you by Kids Club on the Pike. And I want to thank them. I spoke at a school in Providence on Friday, and I was talking with Kristen at Kids Club on the Pike, which they handle birthday parties or team parties or before and after school programs, preschool programs, summer camp. And I was talking to Kristen. I said, yeah, I'm going to go and speak with these children. And Kids Club on the Pike, they came up with 110 water bottles that every student was given to. That is dedication. That is commitment. That is excellence. Kids Club on the Pike. They're located right on Plainfield Pike, right off of 295 on the Cranston-Johnston line. And right now you can register your child for their summer camp. 401-443-5336. I also share their Facebook page. Maybe it's for a week. Maybe it's for a month. Maybe it's for the entire summer. Maybe you break it up. Whatever. Talk to them. Reserve your space. Your child, summer camp, Kids Club on the Pike. 401-443-5336. Well, folks, good afternoon. I recognize, listen, the administration is certainly under fire. And I understand that, especially where we are, where it's all you hear about is what Gabe Amo says and what Seth Magaziner says and what Sheldon Whitehouse says. But that's not the country. That's not the country. And I believe in the strategy that they are putting forward. Keep in mind, the Trump administration has 4 years to execute this. And one of the problems in our area, Rhode Island and Massachusetts, is the waste and fraud goes hand in hand with the Democrat Party. I mean, they're essentially built on it. So the idea of getting rid of it doesn't come into play. It's not lost on me that if you're a local, this is why I don't focus not a lot on local, as far as like covering them, politics. What's the point? What do I want to sit down and have a conversation with Sabina Matos and Governor Mckee? No. I think they're terrible. I think they're a disaster. And they know I think they're a disaster. For what? The people that have to cover Seth Magaziner, Gabe Amo, Sheldon Whitehouse. I can't even listen to their nonsense because that's what it is. It's complete nonsense, and they're out of step and they're disingenuous. And I'm very comfortable with the platforms that we have. We're able to expose a lot of this stuff. They're so upset, and I talked about this, of my coverage of them, that Dawn, whatever her last name is, Hewer, something. She's a state senator from Newport. She has legislation. She wants to shut down my Instagram page. I mean, they're nuts. Of all the things they should be focused on, no matter what I do, they want to just continue to attack and come after me. Now, for those with Road Patrol Live, tune in. Now, we will be live tonight, and it's Wanathon. Final day of the month. We have an anonymous donor who matches all of the stars we've received during the day and night of the final day of the month. So if you like the content, we've had a big month. that Cranston story, come on, that without question, where you have the family praising the coverage, you have the police praising the coverage, and then little Linda. I think that should be worth something. But I like the fact that our platforms continue to grow. We just hit 100,000 followers on TikTok. We're at 90,000, on its way to 100,000 followers on our Facebook page. Instagram and YouTube are both almost now at 55,000. Plus we have the radio show. Plus we have DePetro.com. Plus we have X. This is, the future is here, folks. Folks, speaking of the future, if you're thinking of having any work done in your home, Arch Design Builders, Ed and Roxanne, I was talking about them last week. They are just phenomenal, and they are remarkable people. And I not only do I respect their work, I really like them. They're just great people. Call them Arch Design Builders, 401-207-4124, 401-207-4124, Arch Design Builders. Whether maybe it's for you want to open up your family living room area. Maybe it's a new kitchen. Maybe it's a deck or a bathroom or a special project. Arch Design Builders. One thing I know about Ed and Roxanne is I understand the Arch difference. When you deal with Arch Design Builders, after that experience, you're not going to want to deal with anyone else. Arch Design Builders. Ed and Roxanne, family owned and operated. Call them today. Remember, meet with them. Free meeting, free consultation, 401-218-9707, 401-218-9707. I share their Facebook page and Instagram page. It's Arch Design Builders. Well, folks, good afternoon on this final day of March. We will be live later on, but make sure you follow and like the page. And this is going to be a different type of week. Now, there's two cases that are starting tomorrow. One is the Karen Reed trial. The retrial begins with jury selection. And then we'll also keep an eye on the naked fat test coach. His jury selection begins as well. This is, the guy in North Kingstown. Let's see how that case plays out. I don't know what's going to happen. It's such a bizarre case. We know that in the past he did collect a paycheck from Pork Boy down the dial. The whole thing to me is really odd and very strange. And we'll see, though, is it possible that Rhode Island law is a little vague and so they're unable to convict him of a crime? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I think all bets are off on that. Possible, but we don't know. All right. Well, listen, thank you, everybody. If you're listening to the radio, stay tuned. Thank you to Justin Katz, our segment Politics this week. If you're listening to the radio, stay tuned for the 2 o'clock news. Everyone else, we will be live. Wanathon tonight, final day of the month. We'll see you later on this Monday.